Okay, so like every mitzvah, we're going to get into the details of this, and like I said, it's probably going to get a little bit heavy for a lot of you, but we're going to take it slowly, and we're going to have patience, realizing that a lot of the stuff that we are coming across, you're not familiar with. So it takes time to familiarize yourself. It takes time to get familiar with the map. When you walk into a big park, it takes time. You have to look at the map. Maybe sometimes you go around the whole park. You have to get your bearings straight. This is here, that is there. And then you get, an idea that you can somewhat, like I said, wrap your mind around it. So first we're going to talk about the background, then we're going to get into the details of what is the energy behind every single mitzvah and what are you triggering by doing those mitzvahs. So before we get into that, once again, what is Kabbalah? Kabbalah is a wisdom, which is the deepest level of the Torah. Everything about the Jewish people we receive from the wisdom and the intelligence of God's book, the Bible. It's our constitution, it's what defines us, and there is no reason to be doing anything as far as spirituality and as far as God goes unless God reveals to us what this wisdom is all about. Our minds are too small. We are too small. We are physical beings. And besides the fact that we are small and that we are physical and our filters are very coarse, the filter of our brain, the filter of our eye is very coarse. In other words, puts a limitation on what we will see, what we will understand, what we will perceive. This is all about understanding God. This is all about connecting ourselves with a metaphysical dimension of the universe. To be accurate and to be authentic about this metaphysical energy, the only true wisdom has to come from the book of truth, which is the Bible. The godly given wisdom that God gave the Jewish people to be a light unto the nations. That's Kabbalah. Kabbalah is the deepest level of the wisdom that we draw and we derive out of the Torah. So you remember last week we were talking about looking at a human being. There's what you see on the surface, but then if you are internal medicine, from looking at the surface, you may understand what's going on with the organs. If you are a psychologist, you will understand what emotional place that individual is in. And all of that comes out of the same person. You remember last week we talked about when a person makes a statement. So when the person makes a statement, sometimes there's what he says on the surface, but then from the kind of way in which he conveys the message, you can get a whole different other story that is really intended inside this message that the person is saying. Same thing is also with the Torah. The Torah talks on many different levels. Four, to be specific. We're going to get into the number four and why that's so significant tonight. Okay? So there's four different levels that we understand the Torah. The simple, what it's hinting to us. Then there is a more broader and wider kind of area, which is called drush. That's the homiletical kind of interpretations that we get out of the words. And then there's soid, and that is the secrets, the soul, the deepest aspect that is behind the commandments, that is behind the stories. Not only is it deep from the outside going in, the correct way to look at it is from the inside going out. It's because that secret and that soul is the way it is deep down. That's why it expresses itself in the story and in the rule that we see out on the surface. You follow what I'm saying? So in answer to Yochevet's question, it's a general answer. We're going to get to the specifics, but first, the specifics is out on the surface. You have to put out the tefillin. You have to light the Shabbat candles. You got to keep kosher. You're not allowed to mix milk and meat together. Okay, so that's all out on the surface. What's triggering all those commandments? Why are those commandments in the Torah? And that's what hopefully we'll get to at some point in this course and in this group of classes. So that's the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah means the wisdom that was received from one spiritual teacher to another spiritual teacher out of the words of the Torah that was revealed to the first spiritual person. What does that mean to be a spiritual person? The person refined themselves into such a degree of godliness that they saw spirituality. They were attached and connected to spirituality. So spirituality revealed and expressed itself to them. You can't be a coarse individual lying and wallowing away in steak and in French fries and in everything that's physical and materialistic. That's not spiritual. That's being, that's being completely immersed in materiality, in the body, in physicality. Spiritual means something that goes beyond the materialistic, something that goes on beyond the physical. It's a person who is completely committed and lives a life that is elevated from the physical impulses and the physical pursuits that unfortunately control and govern most people. And so when you're a spiritual individual, these spiritual secrets are revealed to you out of the words of the Bible, out of the words of the Torah. So the first person to receive these secrets last week at the end of the class, I told you quickly, was Adam. Adam received that information from an angel called Raziel. Raziel, the angel, Raziel, Raziel, the angel, he revealed these secrets to Adam, the first human being. Adam, it's written in the Torah that he had a covering of skin. In Hebrew, the word for skin is or, which is ayin, vav, resh. But in some places, the word is spelled as aleph, vav, resh, which means that he was wearing a covering of light. So the skin of Adam was really not the kind of skin that we see here, on us. It was a radiant kind of a skin. That's why it says Adam was able to see from one side of the world to the other side of the world. There was nothing that was, I remember once coming back from New York to Florida, it was a very clear night, and the pilot made an announcement, look out the window because it's so clear tonight, you are able to see 200 miles out of the window. In other words, when the air is pure and so the light of the moon, it was at night, right, can shine brightly, you will see further. But if there's clouds, in other words, there's obstacles, there's obstruction, right, or there's humidity, or wherever it is that's in the atmosphere, you will not be able to see very far. So, in other words, when the perspective is one that is clear, that is refined, so then you see deeper and you see further. And that was the case of Adam. Adam was made by God. Imagine that. God himself personally made Adam and blew in his nostril the soul of life. So he was a very elevated and a very spiritual individual, even after he sinned, but certainly before he sinned. And it's written he was able to see from one side of the world to the other side of the world. He had such a powerful kind of eyesight that was able to pierce and nothing stood in its way, that he was able to see from one side of the world to the other side. So this is the greatness of Adam. He was a pretty kind of elevated guy. So he had this revelation, right, where this angel revealed himself to Adam and told him these secrets. He was able to, so to say, he was a vessel. He was a good vessel to receive and to appreciate. Right? You go to a guy that's lying in the gutters, and you start telling him about refined concepts. He won't accept it from you, because at this point he is coarse, he is low, he's lying in the gutters as a drunkard, and his mind is not open to receiving the refined ideals of life, wisdom, intelligence, symphony, orchestra, music, and things of that sort. Right now, he's living like a pig. He's living like a low-down guy rolling around in the mud, and the only thing he's thinking of is another drink. That's what he wants. So he's very narrow and he's very coarse, right? But then if you can bring him out of that state and put him up on a higher level of humanity, he might then be able to want and appreciate more human kind of pursuits instead of just wanting another drink or another high. He may want to pursue music, wisdom, right? So the more refined and the more spiritual, so then the more open you are to receiving these secrets. And the first one was Adam, in a book that we have to this day, which is called the Book of Raziel, the Angel. The next guy that brought to us a Kabbalistic book who was that? We said it at the end of last week, was Abraham. Abraham, so what was revealed to him was another book that we have to this day, which is called the Book of Formation, the book Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, and that's a book that we have to this day that came through Abraham, who was known as a chariot to God. What does that mean, a chariot to God? A chariot has no will of its own. A chariot just follows the direction of the rider. The rider is riding, and he steers the chariot. The chariot doesn't say, "Excuse me, you're pulling me to the right, but I'd like to go to the left." The chariot has no will of its own. It's like an extension of the rider. And this is a very, very high level that Kabbalah describes very spiritual people. They are like a chariot of God. They put themselves, their ego, aside to such a point. They've aligned themselves with spirituality and godliness to such a point that they are a chariot of God. They already go in whatever way God steers people without any kind of individual will to go in any other direction. That was Abraham, another very spiritual person. So Adam had a skin of light. That's right. The skin of skin was a skin of light. Just in how you change the letter from or with an ayin to an or with an aleph, which is the version that the Talmud talks about. So it's trying to tell us that he was spiritual. He was the most spiritual physical thing because he was radiant with light. Abraham was a chariot of God. So you're talking about a very elevated and connected extension of God. So to him was revealed this book, which is called Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, which is another book of Kabbalah and mysticism, of what we receive through spiritual people from spiritual places, right? But it's all based on, again, always on the words of the Torah. And I'm going to show that to you as we go along. It always has to come out ultimately from the words of the Torah, from the numerical values of the Torah, from whatever the words in the Torah are telling us. And like I'll show you later on, it's amazing how you can notice more messages in the same words when you're called to attention to those other messages. The next book that was revealed to the world in the realm of Kabbalah was revealed to us by another very great rabbi. His name was Rabbi Nechunya, this Ben Hakanah. Nechunya. If you want to spell it out, it's Nechun, Y-A. Nechunya ben, the son of Hakanah, that was his name, Hakanah. And he wrote the book, and attributed to him is the book which is called Sefer HaBohir, the book of brilliance. And this Nechunya ben Hakanah, he was a contemporary of another very great sage whose name was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is the very, very special rabbi. It's written Hillel, the elder, had 80 students. The greatest was Yonasan ben Uziel, and the smallest was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. That's the guy we're talking about right now. Rabbi Yochanan, the son of Zakkai. He was the least of all 80. And this Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is the reason why we have the Talmud today. The entire Talmud is to his credit. Imagine, he knew the language of the birds. He knew the language of the trees. He understood the language of the angels. You're talking about this incredible, exalted kind of person. And he was the least of all this. Imagine how spiritual, how elevated, how brilliant these people were. So a contemporary of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, there's a whole story, an interesting story, how there was a lot of fights at the end of the first temple. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was on the side of trying to make peace. I said the first temple, the second temple. He was on the side of making peace with the Romans. So he got a relative of his to smuggle him out of the wall of Jerusalem, pretending he was dead. And then when he came out of the walls of Jerusalem, he made a deal with the emperor that they should give, the emperor of Rome should give the sages a place up in Tiberia to continue studies. And so it was through that deal that he made with the emperor Titus. At that time, it was Vespasian and Titus. And so the deal that he made with the emperor saved the entire body of the Talmud, of the study and the continuation of the Talmud. Right? They weren't bothered; they were allowed to escape, and a place was given to them up in Tiberias. So a contemporary of his was this Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakanah. So before I get into the last stage, this Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakanah, he designed a prayer that we have in all our prayer books, a very, very spiritual prayer. It's known as the Ana Bechoiach. There's a beautiful song on YouTube that became a very big hit. Ana is A-N-A, Ana Bechoiach, B-E-C-H-O-A-C-H. What it means, Ana, please God, Bechoach, with the power, Gedula Simincha, with the power of your great right hand. And it's a very, very special prayer that has 42 words in it. 42 words is a very, very special number, because one of the most powerful names of God, God has 72 names. One of the powerful names of God has 42 letters in it. It's actually the most powerful of God's names. So he created this prayer that we say in the morning, we say before Shabbat, we say before we go to sleep. It's a very, very special prayer with these 42 words in it to correspond to the 42. What he did was, to be accurate, is that on the side of the Ana Bechoiach, there's always little letters over there. You'll see the Chabad prayer books. And those little letters are names of angels that represent very godly forces. And so then to correspond to those 42 letters, he made this prayer with 42 words in it. And we say it any time that we need or we want to elevate our souls. So like, for example, every morning you want to elevate your prayer to reach God. Before Shabbat, you want to be elevated into the very holy space of Shabbat. Before you go to bed, you want to be elevated when your soul goes up to heaven into good places. So therefore, he used the 42 letters that were woven together into a prayer of these 42 words. Number 42 is very, very powerful. For example, in the menorah that the Torah tells us needed to be put in the tabernacle and in the temple that brought light to the entire world. Guess how many pieces it was made of? Guess? I can't hear you.
42.
Wow, you're so good. Exactly. There were 42 pieces to it. Exactly. Okay. You know, let me ask you to guess this now. When the Jewish people came out of Egypt and they were in a bad place and they needed to reach Egypt, guess how many journeys, how many stops they had to go from the lowest number and the lowest place to the highest, to entering into the Holy Land of Israel. Guess how many stops there were?
42.
You got it, 42. There's 42
the head
stops.
of the class.
42 journeys. That's right. Let me tell you another thing. When you say the Shema Yisrael, right? And then there is the first paragraph that we say, which corresponds, and it talks about loving God and connecting with God. It's a very, very powerful piece of the Bible that men in particular have an obligation to say every morning and every night. Guess how many words there are in this first paragraph of the Veohavto? Come on.
42.
42. You got it. That's right. Exactly. Okay. So let me not give you all the 42s. I'll give you one scientific one. Anybody who comes to shul here often enough knows how I always put in a little science into everything, which is pretty amazing. But when the Kohen Gadol, the great priest, he was in the temple on Yom Kippur, and he mentioned the very, very special name of God, right, which was very powerful in bringing blessings to the people, and only the high priest would know this name and how to pronounce it, right? So when he pronounced it and he verbalized it, how many letters were in this very special name of God? Guess?
42.
42. Okay, here's one more bonus. Okay, in the tefillin that men wear, and I'm not going to tell you how many 42s are, but what you see from here, okay, just give me one more and then I'll give you the signs. Okay, so the tefillin that we wear on the head and the tefillin that we wear on the hand, right, which men put on every day, and which also is a great assistance to women, because men and women are two parts of one soul, right? So when we put on this tefillin of the head and of the hand, right, there's 21 letters, 21 times the name of God, which is significant in itself, in the head, and 21 times, because they're really the same four portions, are put in the head and in the hand. The only difference is that in the head, they're in four different compartments. Four. We're going to get to four. You're going to see how that's important, right? And so in the head, it's put into four compartments. And in the hand, it's four portions of the Torah, but they're all rolled into one. So they're the same four portions, right, that are in the head, but in four separate portions are in the hand, rolled into one roll. But in each tefillin, there is 21 times the name of God. So when a person puts on tefillin, how many times did he place upon himself the name of God?
42.
42. 21 times 2 is 42, right? Let me give you this very interesting scientific piece of information. You know how we look at always the rainbow, and it's such a beautiful kind of thing out in the sky. Okay, so the rainbow happens because there's a little moisture in the air, rain or whatever it is in the air, right? And the sun is shining through the prism of the water, and so that causes a rainbow. You see the globe of the sun reflected in the water. At what degree must the sun be at in order to create this prism through the water? Come on, guess. How many degrees slant must the sun be?
42 degrees.
You got it, 42 degrees. It's at 42 degrees that the sun, right, brings this beautiful array of color, 7 colors, right? In the, by the way, this prayer of the Ana Bechoiach, which has 42 words, it's made up of how many lines? It's made out of how many lines? Let me
4.
give you a hint. Every line has 6 words in it. So if every line has 6 words in it, this is all part of Kabbalah. If every line, there's going to be a lot of math in Kabbalah as well, right? That's all part of the energies that we deal with. So every line has 6 words in it. So if every line has 6 words in it, how many lines must there be to make 42?
7.
7. You got it. So there are 7 lines. Each one have 6 words in it. The number 7 is very significant. 7 is significant. 6 is significant, right? And all of it is part of the mystical, Kabbalistic energies of the world that God created. What I'm trying to impress upon you now is, number one, how phenomenal, the prayers are, and to some degree, how spiritually scientific the things are. You can't take for granted or lightly a prayer that's, right there that you're not in the mood of saying. That prayer is designed in such a way that when you say it, you generate the strength and the energy that comes out of God's name of 42, which is always a name of elevation. Okay, let me give you just one more, right, talking about elevation, right? I don't know if you'll, in the Kaddish, right? So in the Kaddish, one of the most important parts of the Kaddish is the words v'yishtabach, v'yispoer, v'yisroimam, v'yisnasa, v'yisador, v'yisalel, v'yisalol. How many words are that?
7.
7. There are 7 words, each of 6 letters. Not only are there 7 words of 6 letters, each of those 6 letters start with a vav, which is 6. So what you have over here in the Kaddish is always for the purpose of elevation. We say that in memory of somebody to help elevate their soul. We say it in the prayer between one section and another in order to elevate the prayer from one level to the higher level to the next level to finally reaching God when we're standing with our 2 feet together and talking to him personally. That's the highest part of the prayer, when we're standing with our 2 feet together and we're quiet and we're communing with God, right? So there's 4 sections of the prayer to reach that highest part of the prayer. But between each of those sections, there's the Kaddish to help bring us up. And so what do we have in the Kaddish? We have in the Kaddish is just one part of it. There's more even of 42 in the Kaddish. But what we have over here is that in the Kaddish is designed in such a way that it should have the 42 in it, which comes through the number 7 and 6, the 7 words with the 6 letters in it. Okay, I'm telling you a lot of information and a lot of stuff, but this is all part of what Kabbalah is about. It's making you see the deeper side. These are not just prayers that are just, a combination of words. There is deep mystical significance that you are triggering and that you are pushing when you say it exactly the way it's designed, the Kaddish. There is deep and very powerful energy when you say the Ana Bechoiach, the way it's designed, and in the places that you are supposed to go and saying it, right? So that's, we talked about the menorah that has 42 parts to it. When the Torah says you have to have 22 cups and you have to have 11 what's called knobs or circles or balls, and you have to have 9 flowers, right? There's a significance in 22, 11, and 9, but 22, 11, and 9 is 42. And it's the number 42 that is part of the design of the menorah that is meant to bring light into the world through the temple. So all of this, right, is something that Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakanah, who was the teacher of another very, very great Kabbalist, right, and that's his name was Rabbi Elisha, Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. That was another Kabbalist, and this was right. And like I said, around the time of the first and second century, right, A.D. During the time of the Romans and when they destroyed the Second Temple. Okay, the last part of the Zohar, the last part of, so to say, the different steps that brought about the teachings of Kabbalah, of this deeper mystical wisdom through very spiritual people into the world, was, of course, the great Zohar. The Zohar, the book of brilliance, which was authored by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right, who was a student of Rabi Akivah. Rabi Akivah was killed by the Romans at the age of 120. And so Rabi Akivah was instrumental in bringing the book. Rabbi Akivah himself was a great Kabbalist. And he was instrumental in bringing the book of Abraham, which we mentioned before, which was called the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation. So that book, Sefer Yetzirah, which was originally written by Abraham, the patriarch, who we call the chariot, it was actually revealed to the world, right, through Rabbi Akivah. Rabbi Akivah was the teacher of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he is the author of the Zohar, the book of brilliance. It was only revealed in the 12th and 13th century by this guy, Rabbi Moshe ben Leon. Rabbi Moshe ben Leon, he is the one that revealed it and published it for the world to see, but it was, he claimed, and all the great scholars agree that this is a book that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote. And it's all about Kabbalah, it's all about soul, God, the energy that is behind everything, understanding how God operates and appreciating why we do what we do, why it's important to do the way we were commanded to do things. So that's the book of the Zohar. The Zohar, it's so special and so powerful that the Alter Rebbe, and many others as well, the Alter Rebbe is the founder of the Chabad movement. The Alter Rebbe writes that even if you don't understand what you're saying, just reading the words bring tremendous blessings to a person. And that's important to keep in mind, because when we're going to learn now the specific part of the Zohar, which is an introduction to one part of the Zohar, right? Even if you don't understand what you're reading about or get it completely, all the very special benefits of what we're going to be studying, right? We're going to get a teeny little bit into it tonight, right? Yes, Ike.
What is the difference between the Zohar and Kabbalah?
It's the same thing. It's just a different word. What's the difference between, I'm going to give you an answer. What's the difference between medicine and science? Medicine is science. Medicine is an expression of science. Science has a very wide area in which it tells us how the world works. One particular area of science is the field of medicine. So the same thing is also with Kabbalah and the Zohar. Kabbalah would be like the science in the metaphor. It's the wisdom that encompasses everything about what's going on behind the scenes spiritually. That's the general word Kabbalah. And more specifically, there is specific things that the Zohar is telling us in regards to the discipline or to the wisdom of Kabbalah. You get it?
Got it.
So Kabbalah, again, is a general, the word Kabbalah means to receive. But that word Kabbalah has been now associated with a particular kind of wisdom, which is the metaphysical, which is the spiritual. The way that metaphysical spiritual wisdom was conveyed or transmitted was through spiritual teachers who received the teaching through great masters, right? And we're going to learn in this particular part, right? Elijah the prophet came and revealed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai the passage that we're going to be studying when we finally get into it. So here again, you had a very spiritual guy, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who wasn't steeped in physicality, in what is the newest wine and the latest restaurant that makes the best steak. He was in a cave for 13 years. For 13 years, he lived in a cave and he survived on carobs and water. And on Shabbos, it was a miracle that carob tree turned into a fig tree, so he had something more special to enjoy on Shabbos. 13 years. And that's where Elijah the prophet came and taught him. And this other teacher, Achia Shiloni, came and taught him these secrets that a person could understand out of the words of the Torah. So it covers specific subjects, the Zohar, but it is so wide in itself that it covers a tremendous area, a tremendous vast area of this mystical wisdom. The Sefer Yetzirah, for example, the book that Abraham went and taught us, right? That deals more with, for example, the letters with which God used to create the world. And we're going to get into how did God create the world with letters? What in the world does that mean? So each one has a specific area that it deals with, which is very, very limited. The Zohar is like the seminal book. It's the magnum opus in a certain way of all the Kabbalah wisdom, right, is there in the Zohar, which is made up of 3 sections, and then it's made up of even smaller sections that are on different subjects, or they were taught by different teachers. So, for example, one is called the Raya Mehemna. The Raya Mehemna means the faithful shepherd. The faithful shepherd is a different name for Moses. So that's the section of the Zohar that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was taught by Moses. Moses was long dead. He was buried already a long time ago before the Jewish people even came into Israel. And this is like about 1,000 or so years later. But the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu taught new secrets to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and that was recorded in that section which is called Raya Mehemna, the faithful shepherd. The part that we're going to be learning is going to be on what Elijah the prophet, who we know went up to heaven in a chariot of fire. He never died in a conventional way and was buried in the sun, in the ground, right? It's recorded in the book of prophets that his student Elisha said goodbye to him on a chariot that went up to heaven. And Elijah the prophet, we know, comes down and every so often in a physical form, and many times always in a spiritual, his soul, to every bris milah, to every circumcision, right? So that's an answer to your question, Ira. The Zohar is a section. The Zohar is this Kabbalah that was taught specifically through Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai on certain subjects of spirituality. That's the book of the Zohar. It was primarily by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Elazar. There were 10 people in the group, but like the main teachers of the Zohar is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Elazar, who was also with him for those 13 years when they were in the cave. By the way, that cave is a very well-known place in Israel. You can go visit it. It's been marked over the centuries, and it's guarded by a family that has it for hundreds of years as their kind of special thing to be guarding that cave. Next to it, there's a carob tree, and there's a stream of water, right? Just as the story goes. Okay, after those 4, so to say, iterations of the Kabbalah, coming from Adam, coming from Abraham, coming from Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakanah, contemporary Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, coming from the Zohar, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now you have the most recent explanations. Oh, and I was telling you about, the Zohar is so powerful that, just reading it, without even knowing what it's talking about. Generally speaking, right? If you read the Torah, you have to know what you're talking about to fulfill the mitzvah of studying the Torah. But when it comes to the Zohar, it is so powerful, the letters and the spirituality of the combination of those messages, that even if you don't know what you're talking about, just reading it is already a powerful benefit in itself. So then came the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzckak Luria, in about 1500s, and he lived in Sfas, and he came and he gave us great commentary on the Zohar. So today, most of the Kabbalah that is recognized as being the authentic and on the level of regular people understanding and appreciating was told to us by the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzckak Luria. That was his name, Rabbi Yitzckak Luria. And so it's an acronym, the name Arizal, right? Adonenu, it's an Aleph, and then you have Ari, Adonenu, and then the Resh is Rebbe, and then the Yud is Yitzchak, Ari, and Zal is an acronym for Zichrono Levracha. May his memory be a blessing. So when you put all those letters together, Adonenu, our master, Rabbi Yitzchak, may his memory be a blessing. So each word, the first letter of those 5 words, spelled the Arizal, which also means, Ari means a lion. So he was the lion, the leader, the strongest when it comes to understanding and spreading to basically the masses the concepts of Kabbalah and as a commentary on the Zohar. Okay, that was a whole mindful and a whole mouthful that I just shared with you up until this point. Now we're going to get into. Let me do this. We're going to get into tonight a little bit of something, probably not much, actually. Okay. We're going to get into what's called the Elijah's prayer. And as you see over here, it says Patach Eliyahu. Patach Eliyahu is something that Elijah taught Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Before I even get into this, and I've already told you, right? Just one thing about the Zohar, which is even if you don't completely understand what you're learning, but just merely reading these concepts connect you with these incredible energy. Let me share with you some ideas in regards to this Patach and why I chose to teach this to you. The Patach Eliyahu, so in the times of the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzckak Luria in the 1500s, so there was this great rabbi, his name was Rabbi Moshe Cordovero. He was the greatest teacher of Kabbalah at the time, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero from Cordoba. But he was expelled from Spain with the Spanish Inquisition, and he ended up in Sfas. And he was the great teacher of Kabbalah at the time. So Rabbi Moshe Cordovero says that the majority of the body of godliness, the main essence of God's unity is in this Patach Eliyahu. The Patach Eliyahu is an introduction to one of the portions of the Zohar, which is known as Tikkunei Zohar, emendations of the Zohar. And it's basically a part of the Zohar that has 70 explanations on the first word only of the Torah Bereshis. The first word of the entire 5 books of Moses, the first word is the word Bereshis, which means in the beginning. And there are 70 expanded, deep metaphysical explanations on that first word. That's in the section of the Zohar known as Tikkunei Zohar. And as part of the Zohar, an introduction to that part is what we're going to get into, which is known as the Patach Eliyahu, Elijah's teaching to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And this introduction to the Tikkunei Zohar, says Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, contains within itself the majority of the body, the essence of godly wisdom, of Kabbalah. That's what he says about it. There was another great rabbi by the name of Rabbi Yaakov Emden, and he lived around the 1700s. Yeah, there was a very famous. He put together one of the Sidurim, which is a great source for how the Siddur should be organized. He said that when a person says this Patach Eliyahu that we're going to be studying, it's a very special help that his prayer should be received by God. So when a person reads it before prayer, so this is a very, very special mystical, so to say, a support in pushing his prayer up to God. There was another very great rabbi by the name of Rabbi Yehuda Pataya, and he says that when a person says the Patach Eliyahu in memory of somebody who passed away, and he has that in mind, so this Patach Eliyahu can help elevate the soul. The strength of these words can help elevate the soul. All of these things we're going to actually try to explain in the next few classes that we have. What am I even talking about? Souls and elevating it, and what are these concepts all about? Okay, so we're going to get into that. There is another very, very great rabbi by the name of the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai was a great rabbi, a Kabbalist from Baghdad. His name was Rabbi Yosef Chaim, and he says that a person who says the Patach Eliyahu, this is a very special strength for a person to redeem the sparks of holiness in his life. Everybody has sparks of holiness, but sometimes they become lost and drowned and covered. When a person says this Patach Eliyahu, this is a very, very special strength in order to help him refine and to recover those sparks of holiness. And he says it is so powerful, even if you're not in the mood of learning and studying, you just say it. Like we said before in regard to the general Zohar. And you can't even think because your mind is foggy or tired or whatever it is. It will work, says this Kabbalist, very, very famous, world-known and respected Kabbalist, the Ben Ish Chai. His name was Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad. He says it opens up a person's heart and his mind to holiness and to study and to godliness. So this is what we're going to learn, and that's what I decided to use as an introduction to the idea of Kabbalah, which is what this course is all about. Okay, so having spent the majority of today's class on telling you where the Zohar, where Kabbalah comes from, what it takes to be a vessel to receive this spirituality, it's always things that are drawn out of the words of the Bible. Let's start a little bit over here with this Patach Eliyahu. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to be able to open up two screens at the same time. Let me see if I can. I think it's only one at a time. I have to stop, or you do two at a time, and then maybe. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions? I've been doing a lot of talking right now. Does anybody have questions on anything we said while I'm trying to put up all these three things?
I do.
Okay, let's hear it. Come on.
Okay. How does Kabbalah intersect or integrate with the other sects of Judaism, like Reform Judaism or conservative? And how much is all of Kabbalah, or is it just parts of Kabbalah that's woven into Judaism?
Okay, good question. How many things do you see up on your screen?
How many things?
Yeah, you only see the Elijah's meditation, right?
Elijah's prayer meditation,
Part one.
part
You
one.
don't see anything else?
I see the introduction.
Okay, hold on. Let me try that again. It says if you do this, hold Control to select multiple windows. Hold and Control. Okay. Now, let's see if the two of them go up. Okay. Two things are supposed to go up. Okay, forget it. Okay, so because I had the 4-letter word of God that was supposed to come up as well. Okay, in answer to your question, Sherry, it's really I can answer that in a lot of ways, but we don't have a lot of time. So here's the thing: conservative and Reform Judaism is not bound by anything of the Bible. In case you haven't figured that out yet, so they're not bound by anything that's in the Bible. They say that publicly and they say that officially. They just use the Bible as some background or some inspiration, but they're not bound by it. They don't feel bound by it. So, they're out of the picture when it comes to anything about the Bible, as far as the whole Bible or anything authentic about the Bible, right? That's why they feel that it's all right, that you don't have to keep the Shabbat the way the Bible tells us to keep it. That's why they feel a lot of things in the Bible are irrelevant to them. They don't feel committed or bound by the Bible. That's a whole problem in itself, which is another discussion to talk about. Everybody else within Judaism that follows the authentic tradition of Judaism, which means the authentic tradition of Judaism, starting from when the Jews received the 5 books of Moses around Mount Sinai. So when the Jews received the 5 books of Moses around Mount Sinai, that became our book of rules. That became our constitution. So everybody who is committed and accepting of the 5 books of Moses accepts the Kabbalah as an integral part of being a Jew. Now, there are differences of opinion to what degree should people study it or practice it. If you remind me next time, and if you want me to talk about it, there are 2 parts of Kabbalah, and that is there is the study of the wisdom, and then there are people who use that wisdom to manipulate the nature. That part, right, is not the part that is something that is practiced these days. It's very dangerous. And when it's manipulated in a negative way, it can be very damaging to the people who are manipulating it themselves. So one is called the wisdom of Kabbalah, which has its inspirations in our serving God practically. Then there's another part of the Kabbalah, which is using the wisdom of Kabbalah to, so to say, create black magic, to manipulate, and to hurt, and to do things, so to say, against God's will. So that's something which is very unique, something which is very a minority, and that's something which is unheard of for the most part, and very, very limited. The general wisdom of Kabbalah is something which is recognized, accepted, and in some general way practiced more or less by everybody who you would call Orthodox. I don't like the terms Orthodox, Reform, and Conservative, because to me everybody's a Jew. I feel that, creating a label on our practice, it's like calling, I'm stupid, so don't expect of me more. What does that mean? You know what I mean? I'm poor, so they don't expect of me anything more. No. Currently I may not have a lot of money, but I shouldn't label myself as being poor. In other words, accepting that description forever. You can make yourself rich, work, get a better job, study. You know what I mean? If I call myself stupid or I call somebody stupid, that's not right. In other words, I'm limiting them. You're fat. That's it. I'm fat. Don't bother me. I'm fat. What does that mean? The label is a kind of, a demarcation, which is generally very limiting. And so authentic Jews don't like the name Reform Conservative. Reform Conservative was created by the Reform and the Conservative to excuse not being Orthodox, not being law-abiding. So in order not to be law-abiding and do what the Bible says, so they gave themselves a label that, we are Reformed, we've changed. Now, don't expect of us to do any more. Conservative says, okay, we also changed, but we're a little bit more conservative in the reform. They went too far in reforming, so we're also going to change, but we're more conservative in the lack of obedience. But in answer to your question, everybody who is within the fold of commitment to the 5 books of Moses, right, accepts the study and the teachings of Kabbalah as an authentic expression of God's wisdom. That's the essential thing. It's an authentic expression of God's wisdom to the Jewish people. That means it's very important. That means it's very helpful, it's very powerful, and it's very beneficial to those that know it, to those that apply and absorb that idea in their life. Let's start. It's already 8 o'clock. Okay, just let's do a little bit more. I try to keep on the time because I know some people get anxious when we go over the times, but just let's start it a little bit. Patach Eliyahu is taken from the end of the second introduction to the Tikkun Zohar, right? So the Tikkun Zohar is a section of the Zohar. The entire prayer meditation may be divided naturally into 4 parts, corresponding to the 4-letter name of God, Havaya. When you look at the name of God, which is Yud and a Hey, Vav and a Hey, right, you can read it, right, as Havaya. The tetragrammaton, God's divine name of the 4 Hebrew letters, Yud, Hey, Vav, expressing his transcendence of time and space. When we read the word God, how do we normally read it? We say Adonai, right? You're all familiar with that. But the truth is, that's not the way it's written. It's written with a Yud and a Hey, a Vav and a Hey. It's just that today, it is forbidden for us to go and verbalize the name of God as it's written. And that's the way the great priest in the temple would verbalize the name of God. You remember earlier, I was telling you about the high priest, that he would say the name of God and verbalize it with the 42 letters of God's name, right? So this is the name Havaya is made of 4 letters, a Yud and a Hey, a Vav and a Hey. Corresponding to the Yud, which is the first letter of God's name, Elijah informs us of God's indivisible unity, transcending everything, precluding the existence of anything other. This is just an introduction to the Patach Eliyahu. He's getting us ready for what we're going to be taught. And in this Patach Eliyahu, which is divided into 4 sections, the first one corresponds to secrets that come out of the first letter of God's name. And what is that secret? That God is a unity that transcends anything else in the world. In other words, it's impossible to understand God's unity because everything in this world is always a combination of many things. There is nothing which is purely one in this world. Nothing. One person is made up of trillions of cells. One atom is made up of many, many different components that are subatomic. Quarks, protons, neutrons, electrons, right? Everything is made up of smaller parts. There's nothing which is truly one and is not a combination of many pieces that are put together. So this is something, the oneness of God. When we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, God is one, this is a oneness that transcends anything that you could ever imagine. Elijah begins with the foundation principle of all Kabbalah. What is the foundation principle that is at the bottom of understanding everything of Kabbalah? The simple, non-composite, indivisible unity of the blessed Ein Sof. Ein Sof means the infinite light of God. This Ein Sof, this infinite light of God, is an indivisible unity, a oneness which is not made up of many pieces. Every single part of this one is the same one. And so therefore, if you were to sort of say, chop off a part of this one, you would have everything in that one because the whole one is one, every single part of it. Ein Sof transcends all paradoxes. The endless light of Ein Sof both surrounds and transcends the entire system of creation. At the same time, that a measured illumination of its light permeates and is clothed within every aspect of reality. We're getting into heavy stuff here. Okay. You're going to have to read that 20 times to get what it's talking to you about. But I'm going to try to make it simple, since that's my job here on this class to do that. And I'm going to try to give you a scientific, so to say, that's why anybody who comes to the shul often will start appreciating why I'm so excited about quantum physics, quantum mechanics. There's a book called The One, made by some German theoretical physicist. And he tries to promote in that book, I read the book, he tries to promote in that book what's called the philosophy of the monists, monists, that everything is one. The whole universe is one energy, and that one physical energy just pops out into different forms. So the truth is, you and me are exactly the same energy, connected to each other. And that energy that is the same energy that is you and that is me, the only difference between you and me is that that energy decided to express itself, in the case of you, to be you, and in the case of me, to be me. But the energy that is the identity of the entire, this is a scientific idea in quantum mechanics. This is not even philosophy, and this is not even spirituality. There is a physical energy, right? Energy means the power to work, the power to be, because even energy, we don't know what it is in science. We just know that it's there from its power. So we know that it's something. And that something that creates the entire universe is the same one energy for the entire universe. It just expresses itself differently in the different things that we see and that we experience in the world. Anyways, that's the idea that is in science, and that's how this Patach Eliyahu, which is written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in, let's say, in the year like 70 AD or something like that, 90 AD. I got to look it up exactly, but around that time, right? It's written over 2,000 years ago, is giving us already an idea that only recently scientists are discovering. And then we're going to learn later on, right, all the different parts to that energy and what triggers the different parts of those energy to finally become you and me, to finally become the health that we have, or God forbid, the sickness, the blessings, or God forbid, the curses, right? Because what we're going to be studying is going to put us in line and to put us sensitive to this underlying energy that is the deepest trigger to everything that is out there on the physical surface. You get what we're talking about tonight?
Yes.
Okay, a little over the wall, a little bit over the wall, over your heads. Okay, that's the reason why we made a recording. And if you want to try to have a good night, Ira. If you okay, and if you want to have it be absorbed, or you want to ask something, Ira?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should the Elijah began, or the Patach Eliyahu, should that be said